So after the February session, we invited you to participate in the community and share what your company's top 3 carrots are and what 1 carrot you wish your company could offer. We want to thank those individuals who did participate. For today's presentation, a self-awareness handout was posted in the community, and I also emailed it to everyone yesterday. We hope you had a chance to fill this out and have it in front of you during the presentation today. If not, we will go ahead and drop that link in the chat so that you have it if you do not have it currently. Our Leadership Excellence Series co-chairs, Jim and Scott, who are on the camera, will introduce today's speaker and moderate the session. So with that, welcome Jim and Scott.
Thanks, Brittany, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today's session will be a special topic lecture presented by a hospitality leader. This lecture specifically covers emotional intelligence awareness in leadership. Across industries, polls, and leadership articles, emotional intelligence is consistently the top 5 skills needed for an effective leader. It is also considered the hardest to develop. Or is it? An organization struggles to retain and develop leaders. It's vital to create a space where emerging and seasoned leaders can come together to learn, grow, and amplify their impact through improved self-awareness to increase engagement and productivity in business.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Schiff, one of your co-chairs here, and we are just thrilled to welcome our speaker today. Our speaker today is Rachel Coolin. She has 19 years plus of experience leading, developing, and coaching global teams in Fortune 500 companies. She has led teams across the globe, from India to Denmark to New York, and since 2015 has designed, developed, and delivered training that has produced an ROI exceeding $3 billion. In 2020, Rachel took her most significant leap of faith and started her training and coaching business, Realize Your Coaching, where she works with leaders and teams across the country to flex their self-empowerment muscles to create the impossible. Rachel's work with corporations and individuals inspired her 2022 book, Living Fearlessly Ahead, to empower people to live and lead with impact. Please give a warm HFTP welcome and join me in welcoming Rachel.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to have everybody here today. I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a minute so we can dig right in. We have a lot to talk about and a lot to cover. This is Amplify Your Impact. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence and how you use emotional intelligence to live and lead with impact. Before we dive in, I have a question, so let's get in the chat, and I'm going to bring it up here. Did everyone get a chance to do the pre-work before showing up today? Did anyone get a chance to do the pre-work? Yes, great. And for those, if you didn't, don't worry, you're not going to fall behind. It's okay. For those that did do the pre-work, there's going to be some questions here that might add a little additional thought for you because you did the pre-work. So thank you for those that did do the pre-work. I really appreciate it. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to start talking about our learning objectives today. We're going to discuss emotional intelligence and the aspects of emotional intelligence. We're going to be creating the awareness so that you're able to shift patterns and increase engagement as a leader and in your life. What actions you can take so you can start incorporating emotional intelligence in your day-to-day. And finally, creating accountability that sticks, right? That sticks. So I do want to start. I thank you so much for Jim for telling a little bit about me. You saw a little bit about me and my past, my history, and what I've done. But a little fun fact about me is I can solve a Rubik's Cube in less than 2 minutes. I would love to hear a little fun fact about everybody that is on the line today. It's always great to get to know each other a little bit, get to learn a little bit about each other. So I'd love to hear a small little fun fact about you that you like to share, and we can start talking about it. All right, what are some of the fun facts? Anyone want to share your fun facts? Retired from ice skating. There you go. Oh my gosh, I have so many questions about that. Anyone else want to share their fun facts? Anyone else? All right, well, as you're doing that, as it's coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about the various aspects. Oh, did theater for many years. Decent singer, Troy. Very good. Health insurance. Oh my gosh. You wrote a children's book. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Oh my gosh, we get some really talented karaoke. Roy, you and I need to connect on the Rubik's Cube. I love this. All right. Well, thank you everyone for a little bit about you. Please continue to put them in the box. I'd love to see them. So there are 5 areas of emotional intelligence. And today we're not only going to highlight each area, but we're going to dig into how you can start focusing on these pieces of EI to amplify your impact. And we're going to talk about the self-awareness piece first. The self-awareness piece first. All right. Oh my gosh, so many good things in here. People are keeping track. In the chat function, how many people think that they're self-aware, like to consider themselves self-aware? You can say yes, you can say no, you can do thumbs up. Who likes to think themselves self-aware? Yeah. Yes times 2. Yeah, a lot of yeses. Yes, I love it. Yes, we like to think of ourselves as self-aware. And as was mentioned by Scott, across industries, across polls, across studies, Harvard, Gallup, you name it, self-awareness, emotional intelligence is consistently one of the top 5 skills that organizations are looking for in leaders. Yet organizations also find it the hardest to train. And as someone who spent their life dedicated to training, I will tell you, it's because you cannot train self-awareness. You have to give space for self-awareness. And that is what HFTP and I are going to do today, is give you space to create self-awareness, because that's where true change happens when it comes. So yes, so as we said, top 5 leadership skills. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. Everything is built on self-awareness. And if we're not getting self-awareness right, we're probably not going to get the other aspects correct as well, the other components as well. So when we're practicing self-awareness, when we're raising our level of consciousness, we're raising up who we are, everybody wins. Now I want to talk to you about Dr. Tasha Eurich. Dr. Tasha Eurich and her team went out and they wanted to uncover more about self-awareness. They really wanted to understand what it means to be self-aware. And when they went out, they had the questionnaire, they found all the people, they called them their unicorns. They did find people that met all the criteria for self-awareness. And there was a lot of incredible data that came out of this study. But I'm going to talk to you about a few things right now. We're going to start a poll. Let me get it up here. First poll question number 1. Let's launch it. According to studies, what percentage of the population thinks that they're self-aware? So according to Dr. Tanya Eurich and her study, what do you think? Thinks that they're self-aware? All right, we got some good answers coming in. Oh, it's ties going back and forth here. How many think? All right, 95, 87. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. So for those of you that guessed 95, you were correct. 95% of people think they are self-aware, think that they're self-aware. Let's see, did you hear the results here? All right. So now we're going to go to the second question. So the second question that she found the answer to, let me go back here. Second question, what percentage of people practice self-awareness correctly? What percentage of people do you believe practice it correctly? Let me think. All right, we got it. Here we go. All right, we got a tie. Oh, we got a 3-way tie here. We got a 3-way tie. Which percentage, how many practice it correctly? All right, for those of you that guessed 10 to 15%, you were right. 10 to 15% of people practice self-awareness correctly. And I'd love to know in the chat function, how many of you have met someone that could use a little more self-awareness, who could use a little more self-awareness in your life, in their lives? How many have met someone? Right, we all have, right? So while it may seem staunch, the 95% or think they do it and 10-15% practice it correctly, we've all met people. The statistic makes sense, right? It makes sense. And today we're going to talk about how we can start to practice self-awareness correctly, right? So that we're leading with impact, we're amplifying our impact. All right, so we're going to do that. So we're going to move a little bit. I want to hear a little bit in the self-awareness of what leadership skills, Richard is per my wife, I love that. What leadership skills are important to you? So I said self-awareness was one that organizations are consistently looking for. What leadership skills are important to you? And put those in the chat box. Consistency, accountability, teamwork, empathy. Good. We're going to talk about empathy today. That's one of the skills. Problem solving, integrity, creativity, time management, dependability, lots of skills, walking the walk, right? Doing what we say we're going to do, communication, respect. These are all incredible skills, right? So many. Some people have more, right? More than one. Setting the bar, reliability, empathy. Again, we're seeing a lot of empathy, and we're seeing some hand raised too. And we can get to questions too. So if you want to put your question in the Q&A box, go ahead and put it in. And when we get to a moment, possibly answer that for you. Awareness. So as we move on from this, as we can read in the chat box, and you're all seeing right now, so many different skills are important to all of us, right? And our answers are a reflection of skills we think we have, right? Skills we appreciate in others, or maybe we had a leader in our past that lacked some of these skills. So this is really important to me, right? Now, as leaders, as whether you're leading teams or an individual contributor, emerging leader, we're all leaders. It is impossible to be all things to all people at all times. And that's not the point, right? Today is not about making you a certain type of leader or a clone of one another. As we learn, as we grow in our self-awareness, as we start to gain knowledge and experience, we're going to learn how we can utilize emotional intelligence to show up and lead in any situation, because your effectiveness as a leader is in your individuality, the unique gifts that you have, your perspectives. And that all starts with the level of emotional intelligence you have. And you can probably all think of the great leaders, and I'll stop sharing. You can probably all think of the great leaders that you have had the pleasure of working with or experiencing in your life, right? The leaders that are out there. And there's things that leaders do, right? And we'll all probably agree to this. Leaders show up, right? They show up. But there's a difference between showing up and creating impact. There is a difference. And the thing that leaders do, exemplary leaders, what they do is they have attention and intention. If there's two words I want you to remember or take away from this time that we have together today, it is attention and intention. Attention is focused awareness. Intention is awareness given purpose. Exemplary leaders ask themselves two questions. Where is my attention? What is my intention? And so often our minds wander, instinct and habit takes over. We sort of nod, we take notes, we're dialing it in, but we're not showing up in the fullness of who we are and those around us that we're leading. And get it, like we're sitting in meetings, we're looking at the pile of work that's on our desk, or we're navigating employee retention, dealing with change, big business issues, and asking those sort of questions when you catch yourself mind wandering or not being present, asking yourself those questions. Where is my intention and where is my attention and what is my intention? Because if your attention is everywhere, it's nowhere. And that is a huge part of the self-awareness piece. Now, this is a simple definition of self-awareness, but there are really two types of self-awareness. There are actually two types. There's internal and external self-awareness. And most people confuse self-knowledge, what I know about myself, as self-awareness, but there is an internal and external piece. Internal self-awareness, how we see ourselves, our values, our passions, our strengths and weaknesses. Those with high internal self-awareness are associated with higher job and relationship satisfaction, personal and social control, happiness. Those with external self-awareness, high external self-awareness, how other people see us, are more skilled at showing empathy and are better able to take other people's perspectives. And for leaders who see themselves as their employees see them, their employees tend to have better relationships with them, they're more satisfied with them, and they see them as more effective in general. So with the external piece, this is where if we were live, this is where the Q&A starts to come in, people start to get into this external piece. It's not about what everybody thinks about you. This isn't about what everyone thinks about you. This is also not about, oh, I don't care about what other people think, or avoiding asking the question because I really don't want to know, because we're all neurobiologically wired to care about what other people think. This is really caring about what certain people think, right? Soliciting feedback from people you look up to, you care about, your mentors, your sponsors, the people who care about you. And what's fascinating in the research between internal and external self-awareness is there's virtually no connection between the two. Having one doesn't mean you have the other. Being good at one doesn't mean you're good at the other. There's virtually no connection. And while it's tempting to value one over the other, they were equally as important when it comes to seeing ourselves, to the self-awareness, to getting the feedback. Now, earlier, I was talking about Dr. Tanya Urich and her study. And there was a main difference between the groups that were self-aware and those that were less than self-aware, a 10-fold difference between the groups that were self-aware and less aware. The group that was self-aware did one thing much differently. Those that were self-aware asked what questions? What if there's another way? What can I do differently next time? What can I learn from this situation? What are my options? Asking what gives us power and control. It has us staying in the present. It has us thinking about our other opportunities or different ways that we can act in the future so we can be the best versions of ourselves when situations arise, and thereby amplifying our impact. Why is a very ineffective self-awareness question, although we tend to circle around why a lot. It is very ineffective. Those with high self-awareness ask what? Now I have the biggest what question for you. The biggest what question, what is your why? What's your purpose? And this is a deep question, and we don't often spend a lot of time considering it, or we get stuck in it and not really sure. But if you want to know where to go, and say you're looking at a map, for example, you first need to know your starting point. But too often we allow our awareness to be all over the place or in any general direction, instead of taking the time to be honest with ourselves, self-reflect, and figure out where we're standing today, both internally and externally. And part of that internal self-awareness, that self-knowledge piece, it's our personality traits, like we talked about, our values, our attitudes, but it's also our purpose, our cause, and our beliefs. That's what's your why. And in the pre-work, for those who did the pre-work, don't worry if you didn't, don't worry about it. If you want to pull out your pre-work now, if you remember what you wrote, I asked an important what question. It was the first question in your pre-work. And the question was, what's 100% true about who you are as a person? And this is an important question because this is something we can always anchor back to in any situation. And I'm going to call out a few people who, I know some people sent their pre-work in, and then they were kind enough to allow me to see their pre-work. So I appreciate you sending your pre-work in. It did not need to be sent in, so I don't want you to think that you needed to send it in. So a few people sent in their responses and are allowing me today to read out their responses. So what's 100% true about who you are? So Jim said, I attempt to always try to accomplish the next right thing with integrity in all my interactions. Susan said, I'm 100% dedicated. Heather said, I'm extremely dedicated. This is a belief, right? This is our belief. And these are positive beliefs, right? And it's something we can always anchor back to in times of uncertainty. Yours may have been something, and if you want to share it, you can flip through it in the chat. Could have been something like, I'm a good person. I have a strong work ethic. I care deeply, right? Those maybe some of the other ones that came up. And like I said, I'm authentic, right? Thank you so much, Lacey. I appreciate it. Motivated. So we can see this, right? We have these beliefs, right, that we can always anchor back to in times of uncertainty. Now, honesty, right? Love teaching and developing others, right? What do we anchor back to? Now, I did ask another question. It was the third question in there, and it was, does this truth help you or hurt you? Now, I'm not going to discuss the answers of the people that sent this in to me, but it's an important question. It's an important question because sometimes these beliefs can hurt us. Having a strong work ethic may mean I'm neglecting my health, or being a good person could mean that other people are walking all over me, right? Or I'm caring so deeply could mean that I'm losing myself in my work, right? So it's 100% belief about who I am as a person, this truth, but is it helping me or hurting me? Now, if you find yourself unsure, Bill, depends on who I'm dealing with, yeah, right? If you find yourself unsure, this is a great opportunity to think about what's a new, more powerful belief for me? What's a new, more powerful belief? And I'll just share mine. So I believe I have purpose. That is my 100% true about me. I have purpose. And no matter what comes on my way, I anchor back to, I know I have purpose, right? And if you read books on leadership or read about leaders you admire or hear about people who've accomplished incredible feats, professional athletes or someone who's climbed Mount Everest in a wheelchair, or fighter pilots, or these amazing teachers doing great work, you name it, they were crystal clear on their why. Crystal clear on their why, their purpose, their cause, their beliefs. And they knew it. And while their paths were not linear and neither are ours, they still knew. So I want you to keep this in mind. It's much easier to get where you want to go, where you know where you stand. And that is why your why is so important. But when we align that with our core values, those are at the foundation, the core values. It's lights out. Our why and our values are lights out. We become a force to be reckoned with. And there are all types of values. There's personal values, professional values, spiritual, health, financial. But today we're talking about core values. Your core values are the ethics or ideals that guide you in making decisions, building relationships, and solving problems, which is what you as leaders are doing every single day. And you did the values exercises pre-work, so pull out your values now too, because I want you to look at them. And if you didn't do it, don't worry. You can just, if you want to take 10 seconds to write down your values, please go and do that. I have a few questions for you. And these questions, I'm going to pose them as rhetorical. You do not need to answer if you don't, but if you feel like you want to answer in the chat box, that would be great too. Sometimes our own answering and putting ourselves out there gives people permission to also answer as well. So I encourage that, but they are rhetorical. So I want you to look at your values, and I have 3 questions for you. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you. Faith, loyalty, happiness, and responsibility. Wonderful. So my first question for you, are your values the same values that you grow up with? Are these the values that you grew up with? That's the first question. No, yes, absolutely, no, yeah. Values change. And I want you to know, there is no right or wrong answer. There is no good or bad answer. These are just people's answers, right? There's no right or wrong. Some are, some aren't, right? Being very, very honest. Some of them, yeah, very much so. Some people, yep, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, things, and for some people to know, right, these change, right? As we grow and evolve, and sometimes our life changes, our values shift, right? Things happen that cause our values to shift. Second question I have for you. Are your values the values you think you should have? Are they the values you think you should have? All right, Grant, nope, some of them, yeah, mostly yes, these are the values I should have, most definitely. Great, yes, yeah, so yeah, mostly. And my third question for you depends on the values. All right, Susan, that is honest, right? That's good. I love that. Third question, are your values the values you think others want or think you should have? This is a big question. Are your values the values you think others want or think you should have? Liliana, not anymore. So what happens is you're writing it in, and I want to see your answers. Thank you, right? Because by you doing it, you give permission to others to as well. We tend to take the values that we're given as children, and we take those along, and those may or may not be our core values anymore. And we may or may not have reflected on why or if, and that's right. That is, it just is. And we take our values we think we should have, or values we think others expect us to have, and those values may not be aligned to who we really are today, which will absolutely affect your ability to show up and impact. We can be afraid of what other people might think if we aren't doing or believing what they expect us to do or believe, which affects our ability to show up with attention and intention. But when we're aware of our core values, we can find ways to express those values regularly in both our personal and professional lives. So allowing ourselves to express our values is an invitation for others to also express their core values. And in a time when we're seeing record turnover, absenteeism, presenteeism, burnout, resistance to change, aligning to our why and our core values helps us recognize we can express that helps us to better show up in those situations. Because in coaching, when someone comes to me and they're feeling tension or dissonance, there is always a values misalignment. There's always a values misalignment. So say, for example, one of your values is mindfulness, but life and work are so busy, you're not able to practice your mindfulness, right? After a while, you're going to start feeling that tension. Or if family and friends are part of your core values and you find yourself working day or night and not spending any time with your family or friends, right? You're probably not going to be a very pleasant person to be around. There's that dissonance, that tension, because I'm not able to express my values. I will say this. Your core values does not mean that the other values are not important to you. That those things that you're valued, and I know some people sent their values in and they talked right here. We talked about accountability, dependability, commitment. I'm looking down at my notes here, hard work, transparency, stability. It doesn't mean those things aren't important to you or they're not there. Maybe they're just not your top 5, right? Maybe they're just really not at the top. So I'd encourage you, now that we've asked these questions and we've talked a little bit about it, take a look at those core values again, right? Are these truly my core values, or are they the values I think I'm supposed to have? Because it's part of that self-awareness piece, that where I stand right now, knowing my values is going to help me be able to express them, which helps me better able to show up for those in my life. Now, moving on to the external self-awareness piece. We are notoriously poor judges of our own capabilities. There was a study done of 400,000 people, and they found when people self-rated their abilities, and they were also rated by an external view, that they were only aligned a quarter of the time. And it wasn't that I overestimated my abilities. I may have also underestimated my abilities as well. So I may self-report that I'm a great negotiator. And Jim says, you know what, Rachel, I say, you know, Jim, I want this new car. I know you're selling a car. Tell me what price you want for it. And Jim says $5,000. And I say, I'll take it, right? You might be like, I wouldn't call that negotiating, right? But I could self-report thinking I'm a great negotiator. Or I might say, hey, what about $49.95, right? We wouldn't say that's great, right? So we're notoriously poor judges at our own capabilities. And I want you to take note of what I'm going to say next. With no external data, we will reinforce inaccurate perceptions of ourselves, which can be harmful for development, performance, and effectiveness of teams. So I'm going to say that statement again, and I want you to think about it from the perspective of leading your teams. With no external data, we will reinforce inaccurate perceptions of ourselves, which can be harmful for development, performance, and effectiveness of teams. You and your people need the feedback. And it's essential for transforming that self-knowledge piece, just that own like personal introspection piece, to a full, complete self-awareness piece. And as leaders, as emerging leaders, this is why the feedback, effective feedback, right? The right type, it creates that line of sight between self-awareness and job success. And we cannot assume that individuals recognize the need for self-awareness. We saw the statistic, right? Only 10 to 15% of people are practicing correctly, although a lot of people think they're doing it right. So we can't assume that individuals recognize the need for accurate self-awareness, because self-awareness truly is a superpower. You want to continuously learn and hone and develop the self-awareness piece, this foundation piece of emotional intelligence. Because when you raise your level of self-awareness, raise your level of consciousness, you show up differently. You see people and situations differently. You're able to reframe and react differently. And studies have shown, and you see it on your screen here, those that are self-aware, you see that, are more fulfilled, have stronger relationships, right? Perform better at work, more promotable, all things we want for ourselves, right? And for those that we lead, those around us. And in the low self-awareness piece, I know we've talked about, we've all met someone who has low self-awareness. We see in that they tend to criticize others regularly. They blame others, right? They're unable to admit mistakes, and they tend to be very vague about their emotions. We've all met people in that space. But self-awareness is a superpower. And those who are leading teams or looking to lead teams, I want to show you these statistics as well. We see that teams, when there's higher self-awareness, it's almost double in most instances, as you can see here, increased decision-making quality, increased coordination, better conflict management in teams that are practicing self-awareness. So that is the foundation, that self-awareness piece. And we spend a lot of time here because it's really important to make that foundation right. And Grant, yes, there is a definition of negotiation and haggling for sure. So we're going to move on to the next piece, which is self-regulation. It's an attribute that allows an individual to control their responses to situations and people. This results in avoiding outbursts, right? Making rash decisions, and then as well as it allows other people to create predictable and calming behavior for other people. And while our situations at work may vary differently, and some of you may work in more highly charged situations where outbursts by teammates or bosses is more common, emotional self-regulation is a necessity. So in the chat box, I want to see here, what is your biggest stressor? We're talking about self-regulation. What's your biggest stressor? What's going on in your life right now that's stressing you out? What is stressing you out? And while you're putting that in, now, Fernando, I see your question. I may have an answer for you coming up in a few slides. So thank you for bringing it up. Due dates, time management, children, right? Time for family, deadlines, perfectionism, recovering perfectionist here. Thank you, Lisa. Balancing, organization. So we all have these stressors. We're planning. Oh gosh, 2 kids under 2. Whew. 2 kids under 2, that's a lot. So we all have a lot of things going in our lives, right? We have busy work lives, home lives. We're dealing with traffic, deadlines, debt, aging parents that need to be visited, prescriptions that need to be picked up, right? It's a lot. And for some of us, some days we're better at dealing at it than other days. Some days we're better at it than other days. But here's what's happened. Without knowing or practicing self-regulation, we will stack all the things, like, well, you know, with the saying, like, I've had it up to here, right? We stack the things in our lives. And when something additional starts to get added in, I saw deadlines in there. So there we go. This is deadline's it gets added into the plate. We feel we have nowhere to put it, nowhere to go, right? So we react. And so often others, or maybe inanimate objects, bear the brunt of our stress. So we let our stress out and we feel better because epinephrine comes out, right? This is your adrenaline. This is our fight or flight response. This is why after taking a kickboxing class, you feel so good, right? So we let that stress out, we release that stress, and now we feel like we find the room to manage the deadline that was added in, right? But there are many things we can do to better self-regulate, right? Always being in a flight or fight response is not good for our bodies or our brains or those that are us or those that are around us, right? And since our lives and our stresses, they don't just go away, we have to learn about the use of various methods to self-regulate. So we're no longer stacking our stress, we're handling them, and we handle them through self-monitoring, right? I catch myself about to do something. I'm self-monitoring myself, or doing the self-talk, right? I'm fine, we're fine, everything's fine. Love that t-shirt. Goal setting, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this done. Or maybe the self-reinforcement, right? You know what? I'm doing a good job, right? Everything's going to be fine. I'm doing a good job. When we do this, when we're able to self-regulate, studies have shown we're able to improve our stress management, we're able to improve our goal achievement, and we're better able to navigate through conflict through self-regulation. So I said all these great things, but how does this really get practiced, right? And there's many different ways to practice self-regulation. So we'll just take the example of deadlines. I had it as my example already, and some of you put it in there. We can practice compassion, right? So I know my boss is under a lot of stress. We could practice non-judgment. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. We can address the stressors, right? Maybe we can ask our boss, like, what do we need to do? That what question, right? What can we do in the future, do differently in the future so that we're not up against such tight deadlines? We can recognize our triggers, right? Our triggers. Why is this deadline getting to me? What does this represent for me? Why am I getting so bad? Like recognizing the triggers behind it too, which helps us better self-regulate what's happening. So this is a bonus. I don't have a slide on this, but this is what I do in my communication exercise that I do. I'm going to give you a bonus, and you're going to want to write this down because this is going to apply for a lot of things for your own self-regulation and when you're dealing with people. Fernando, this might be good for you as well too. So triggers. So there are three main things, three needs that we're asking for. And it might come out in, oh, another deadline, and they always do this to me. And maybe you get the deadline done, you get the report in, but there's possibly resentment still being built up below that, right? There are three roots, and these are the three roots. When we're dealing with issues, we're feeling triggered. It's about one, power and control. Who has the power? Whose priorities matter most? Maybe I have too much power. I wish someone else would take some of this away from me, right? So power and control, that's what's really triggering us, is feeling a need for power and control or a lack of power and control. Number two is care and closeness, like looking for connection. That's what I'm really asking for when I'm triggered, right? I'm looking for that connection, but it comes out in a different way. And the third thing that people are looking for is respect and recognition, being seen, right? Being able to see, I see you, I see what you're doing, I see the effort that's going on. So when we tend to talk about the surface issues up here, but really these are the needs down below that people are looking for. So I want you to remember this goes same for personal relationships as well. So that need to self-regulate so that we're not stacking and blowing up, we're better managing the stress. So all part of emotional intelligence, that self-regulation piece creates reliability. Now we're going to move into the third piece, which is motivation. So I'd love to know from you, what motivates you? What motivates you? What motivates you? And I'm reading through some of your other chat responses before. Thank you. You're self-motivated. Good, right? The internal, intrinsic self-motivation. Good. Recognition, being part of a team, happy hour. I love that. That's always good, right? Maybe that care and closeness. You're a person who likes connection. So when you don't feel that, I love that. Helping others solve problems. Family, recognition. Very good. Being appreciated. Chris, 2 kids under 2. Oh my goodness. Oh, the legacy. I love that. Love that legacy. Having my job done. Good. So, and you can keep putting them in. I want to talk to you a little bit about Dr. Angela Duckworth. Dr. Angela Duckworth and her team wanted to see if they could predict success. So they started to study if they could predict success and why people were successful. So they went to spelling bee champions. They went to talk to them. They went to look at which West Point cadets would stay in training versus dropping out. And for all of you, I know this is not the West Point cadets. This was a free photo. West Point cadets, who would stay, who was going to drop out. And they worked with private companies to determine who would keep their sales job or earn the most money. And in all those different and distinct kind of context and characteristic, one characteristic emerged as the biggest predictor of success, the biggest predictor. It wasn't social intelligence. It wasn't good looks. It wasn't health. It wasn't IQ. And if you want to have a guess at it here, the biggest predictor of success, and we're talking about motivation here, it was grit. It was grit. Passion and perseverance for long-term goals, stamina, sticking with it, working long and hard to make it happen. Talent alone, Kamora, agree, yeah, talent alone does not make you gritty, because there are plenty of studies that show that there are many talented individuals out there who cannot follow through on commitments. Angela goes on to say, Dr. Duckworth goes on to say that the best idea that she's heard about building grit and finding motivation, the best idea she's heard was having a growth mindset. The belief that the ability to learn is not fixed. And there are a number of you on this call today that have exactly what that is. You are all with that growth mindset today. I can learn something new in any situation. We're all teachers, we're all students. So let's talk about grit. Let's talk about motivation. Michael Jordan did not make his high school basketball team because he was deemed too short to play. He was 5'11". Soichiro Honda couldn't get a job at Toyota, so he started his own car company. Soichiro Honda couldn't get a job at Toyota, so he started his own company. Mel Robbins, you may know, was on the brink of divorce, almost $1 million in debt, hitting the bottle day and night, about to lose everything. She is now the highest paid, one of the highest paid speakers in the world, right? Grit, motivation, sticking to it, doing what I need to do to get it done, right? For the long term. And when we're talking about emotional intelligence, this is about the long term. This isn't a simple fix. That's why you can't train emotional intelligence. You got to give space to it. So how do we find motivation? So here's a few ideas for motivation. So I coach leaders regularly, and it seems like the largest hindrance that we see is distractions. Distractions, we're all distracted. I don't know if you would agree with that, but distractions seem, I never find time for my projects, or I can never follow my passions, or I don't feel like I have time to do my habits or hobbies or stay healthy. And when we're talking, it seems like we're really distracted. And in a world where there's endless scrolling and mindless TV, it's very easy for 10 minutes of scrolling to turn into 35, 45 minutes. And next thing you know, or I'm only going to watch one episode of this show tonight. And next thing you know, it turns into 3 or 4 episodes, and you've gone to bed late, and now you don't feel motivated to get up and work out in the morning, right? This all happens. But on the flip side of that, how many have ever been dragging your feet? And you can answer this. You were dragging your feet to go to the gym or get your workout in. But once you got there, you started to feel good. 5-10 minutes in, you're starting to feel pretty good. You might actually have a good workout. Has that ever happened to you? Or maybe there's a pile of boxes that's been sitting in the corner, and yeah, right, all the time, right? I don't want to go, but like once you get in that, I think just start is one of the best things that's on here. It's the easiest thing, right? Just start, just do it, right? The pile of boxes that's been sitting in the corner. I need to go through these and get this done. And you start, next thing you know, an hour later, like you've gotten a lot accomplished, right? So there's an opportunity there for all of us. That just start becomes really important. So I want you to think about that. What works to motivate you? What works to motivate you? How do you stay? I know I talk about what your motivation and what works to motivate you. I would love to know. I hate doing my expenses. Yeah, right. Drag my feet on expenses. But once you get in it and do it, it's like taxes, right? Accountability, staying accountable. Wonderful. Accomplishing my goals, seeing my progress. And we saw that, right? Measuring, you saw that on the list that was there, right? Seeing my progress, the end in mind. Thank you, Trevon. Thinking about the future, right? You're feeling good, meeting goals and deadlines. Like we all know, like when we're doing the thing, when we're showing up for ourselves, we feel pretty good. Like we feel good. Things get done. We're feeling really good about ourselves. It really is, but it's how often we can get demotivated or lose motivation because of distractions that keep us from doing the things that we know we really need to be doing for ourselves. I love it. It's a lot of goal talk. That is wonderful. Right. So we've talked about self-awareness. Yeah, having a little bit helps me do a little more. We talked about self-awareness, right? That internal and external self-awareness piece. Talked about self-regulation, how we regulate our emotions, recognizing our triggers, addressing our stressors. talking about how we stay motivated, right? We heard about grit, Dr. Angela Duckworth and her team, that grit, the sticking to it, that long term. And I just saw a list of people here, like all these wonderful things. Once I get started, I feel good. And nothing makes me more happier than like when, I can do the work and it gets done and I get paid, right? Someone I can get paid, right? This is wonderful, right? The motivation's there. So now we're going to move on to the fourth component of emotional intelligence, which is empathy, the ability to recognize emotions. Sympathy is not empathy. Empathy is a feeling of identification with someone, a feeling of compassion or understanding. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, right? That's pity. And I have a visual here to demonstrate what sympathy can reverse the empathy. And I'd be interested to know for you and your experience, how does it feel when someone's being sympathetic versus empathetic? How does it come across to you when someone's been giving you sympathy, but maybe you were looking for empathy or weren't looking for it at all? How does it come across? Joke, right? Condescending, not sincere. Yes. Absolutely fake. It's terrible. Doesn't make us feel good, right? We're not amplifying our impact by giving sympathy, right? We know what it feels like, right? So it's something we definitely don't want to do to somebody else. Annoying, great word, insincere, wonderful, right? Yeah, all these things that when we're not practicing empathy, when someone's not practicing empathy with us, annoying, insincere, fake, right? It doesn't feel good, right? So we're going to talk about in emotional intelligence space. Yeah, sympathy is not helpful, not helpful. We're talking the emotional intelligence space. Empathy is a very large part of emotional intelligence, how we show up and how we're impacting other people. So in practicing empathy, there are really 4 elements to empathy. One is listening, right? In order to understand people you interact with, it's very important to know how to listen. However, listening doesn't mean understanding the other person's words. We're not just listening to what you're saying. I hear what you say. To really listen, you should be paying full attention to the non-literal message and the non-verbal communication that's happening. So in coaching, we learn to listen to what you're saying and listening carefully to what you are not saying and watching your body gestures for cues. What are the words, if you're leading people and you're working on empathy with other people, what are the words that they're using over and over again? I'm confused. I don't know. I'm at a loss of what to do. Like, what are the words that are coming out over and over again, right? And then when maybe they're talking, maybe their arms are crossed, or maybe they're kind of shrinking as they're talking about themselves and they're making themselves small, right? So it's listening not only to what they're saying, but what they're not saying. So as leaders, you can say, I'm hearing you say, I don't know a lot. Tell me what's going on there. Or you're saying you're confused. Tell me a little bit more about what's confusing, right? So listening to what they're saying over and over again. And in order to improve our listening skills, I think we all know this, not to interrupt, right? Don't interrupt. Avoid giving your opinion unless it's being asked for, right? Listen to the message without judging, showing non-judgment, and paying attention, listening to understand, right? Listening to understand, and that's it, not to have your words out there. I love that. Thank you so much, Yvonne. And paying attention to the nonverbal communication. What are they doing when they're talking? Are they crossing their arms? Are they holding something? Are they opening up? Like, what are they doing? Nonverbal communication will tell us a lot. Remaining calm. Learning to remain calm will help to improve your empathy, right? Without calmness, the ability to listen can be reduced. And this is rhetorical too, but have you ever tried to talk to someone who's like frantic and they're distracted or they're doing something else? They'll either completely ignore you, right? Like they'll completely ignore you, or they're asking you to repeat yourself. So practicing this, that remaining calm, breath control, that focus on the other person is very beneficial in empathy, right? Just sit, hold space, be present. Practicing patience. Patience is also closely linked to empathy. So in order to understand what's going on in someone's head and heart of those around you, we need time, and we need to spend that time patiently. So initially, we may unconsciously refuse to understand the other person. We might hear something and we get turned off, or we don't want to take it, or it's not part of where we are, right? But with patience, the chances of achieving this are much greater. And the last thing is to ask for emotions, not data. So this point is fundamental if you want to succeed in developing empathy, right? Empathy has really little to do with the actual message in the conversation. It's more about emotions, what's going on. Therefore, the more you're interested in the emotion of others, the more empathetic you can be. So say, for example, someone says, hey, I was promoted at work yesterday. A person lacking in empathy or a person who's disinterested might be like, so what do you do now? And do you still work the same hours? A more empathetic person might say something like, so how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? So those are the four that we think about when we're practicing empathy. And now we're going to move into the final component of emotional intelligence, which is social skills, our ability to deal with other people. Have you ever, this is the chat box, have you ever interacted with someone who had poor social skills? Poor social skills. Yes, yes. Lots of caps, lots of caps. Yes, of course, right? We all deal with people, poor social skills. So social skills in leadership are described as our capacity to be a visionary leader, influencing and developing other people, communicating well, being a change catalyst, managing conflict, building bonds, working in teams. So those social skills, those interpersonal skills, as we think about, as we're amplifying our impact, like I said, visionary leaders, influencing and developing others, being a change catalyst. I like to think about interpersonal skills, social skills as like the playground rules when we were kids, right? We weren't all feral children, right? We knew the rules when we got to there. We learned quickly how things worked. And if we wanted to get other kids to play with us or work together or play alongside one another, there was ways to do this, right? And I watch my son play games like hide and seek, like I get hide and seek, but every once in a while, like next thing you know, there's like 8 kids and there's like 2 teams and there's rules and they seem to all know what's going on. And they're like running around for 20 or 30 minutes, having the time of their life, right? It's the ability to get that momentum, to bring people together, that common cause, the interpersonal skills. And they're an essential capability in effective leadership, because with these skills, leaders can better motivate their teams, encourage collaboration, and foster stronger engagement, all of which ultimately lead to organizational success. And here are some ways you can think about as you think about, what do I want to do? If I want to grow my social skills, I want to grow my playground skills a little bit, what do I want to do, right? And here's some simple things to think about as you're thinking about those skills and wanting to develop that. And I want to highlight, ask and stay open to feedback. I know my perfectionists and people pleasers in the group might be like not thinking about this, but they're like, oh God, I really don't want that, right? But it really is, truth is freedom, right? It can set you free, really set you forward when you're getting it from the right people. It's all part of that external self-awareness. So we've covered the 5 areas of emotional intelligence. I want to know quickly, what section has stood out to you? What section has stood out to you? Anything came up, anything that you learned, any section, or what piece stood out to you so far? Empathy, great. Self-regulation. Wow. Wow, that's great. Self-regulation, that really hit. Okay. Wonderful. All right, so a little everywhere. That's good. All right, meet you where you are. So now we're going to talk about the accountability piece, right? Where the rubber meets the road. Because in the beginning, we talked about how we can't train this, right? I got to give space to this. And this is where that space happens. This is where you're going to go away after this call. This is where you get to decide what you're going to do. This is also the place where your brain and your bodies like to pull you back into your comfort zones and stick to your habits we've made. You might talk yourself out of doing anything, out of fear, out of habit, out of making excuses, right? And excuses are just challenges that we've given power to. But here's the good news. You've waited 50 minutes for the good news. The good news is you cannot lose. You cannot lose. No matter where you start, how you start, you win, and those around you win as well. You cannot lose. So what do you gain by growing your why? So we all found that we all had different things. What do you think you gain? What are you going to gain from doing this? Anything. What do you imagine you're going to gain after this? Inner peace. Yeah, could be. Yeah. Control. Good. There's things to gain from all this. Better connection, understanding, put them in there. And when we talk about accountability, some people are like, well, it's just going to take time. Well, things don't take more or less time. They just take different time. It doesn't take more time to stay present. And I love it. Keep putting them in there. What are you going to gain from this? It doesn't take more time to stay present and sit and look at someone in the eye and have a conversation. It doesn't take more time to have a growth mindset, right? You just put on that inspiring podcast for the hour instead of whatever else you were going to do or listen to or watch, right? It doesn't take more time. It just takes different time. Because the key is attention and intention. Attention and intention. And no matter what the situation that's happening, no matter where you are, just remember, where is my attention? What is my intention? All right. Are you ready to amplify your impact? Are you ready? Are you ready to do this? All right. I know we have a few minutes for questions. If you go on and put those in, let's stay connected. Here is my QR code. It takes you right to LinkedIn. Let's be LinkedIn friends. You can feel free to connect or just follow, whatever you do. I'd love to continue. And you'll feel free also to message me on if you ever have any questions, you're unsure. So thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you, everybody.
Sure. Thank you. If anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to drop them. We are kind of at the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and just wrap up. But again, yes, definitely follow Rachel. That was such a fun presentation. So thank you so much. We want to remind everyone to continue using the online leadership community. It is part of the program to participate in the community group. So just make sure you're checking it. I also send out email reminders when we post in there. So do the best you can. Our next meetup is an idea exchange on April 20th. And to prepare for that event, you will have to post within the community for your credit because it'll be more of a discussion-based session. So stay tuned for more information. I promise I will email more about it. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Barbara or myself. And we are so glad everyone is able to come today. And again, thank you, Rachel, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.